Welcome back to me unnecessarily nitpicking things and maybe ruining things for you. Today is the 8th of April 2026 at the time of filming, and I saw this post come up from Dogs New South Wales. They're sort of the body that regulates breeders in the state. This is their post. Today is International Pink Day, a day that stands against bullying and celebrates kindness, inclusion, and respect. And it's not just a message for people, it's one we see reflected in the dog world every day. Dogs don't judge, dogs don't exclude, dogs remind us how powerful simple kindness can be. Whether it's welcoming new members into the community, supporting first-time exhibitors, or encouraging one another ringside, the spirit of inclusion is what makes our dog community so special. So today, wear a touch of pink, spread a little extra kindness, and take a moment to appreciate the lessons our dogs teach us every day. I got a cute little photo. Okay. I understand the sentiment, but I have to call bullshit. Because my little floof, I think he's behind me still. There he is. This kid, he does judge, he does exclude. He's very good with people, he loves people. I think in large part because people give him treats, and I can't convince a dog to give another dog treats. He loves people, but he still has issues with other dogs. And I mean, the fact that it's just like the idea of acting as if dogs are perfect is just hilarious to me. Especially like I've watched some videos from Beckman's dog training, and he deals with a lot of difficult dogs. And there are a lot of dog trainers out there who make their living from dealing with difficult dogs. I'm not saying Triton's at that level, but the fact that like there is an industry around trying to help difficult dogs tells you that this is not really true. I understand the sentiment, but like in Triton's case, he does judge and he does exclude. He's mostly good, but there's a certain subset of dogs he absolutely hates, and he's a little bit breedist as well. So I've noticed, obviously he loves Lappies, Finnish Lapphunds. They're his breed. He recognizes them instantly. He loves them. He plays with them. I don't think he's ever had an issue with another Lappy. I think there was one big meetup we went to where he was exhausted and started to get a little bit, okay guys, stay away from me, I've had enough. But no, he loves playing with them, and he can play with them for a long time. He can just keep going and going. He'll settle down for a rest, and then he'll get up and keep playing again. He loves Labradors. Labradors are great. He hates golden retrievers. And you would think that golden retrievers and Labradors are kind of the same. No, and since he pointed out to me that there's a difference, I've actually noticed that for myself, apart from golden retrievers having longer fur. Labradors, in general, seem to be a bit more settled and sensible. Golden retrievers seem to be a bit more goofy and silly dogs, and he doesn't like that. He wants the more settled Labradors. He generally doesn't like dogs bigger than him, which, is understandable when you're small, and when you're, a creature with teeth coming up against other creatures with teeth. Size can be a bit intimidating, so I don't blame him for that. That's kind of a common thing with a lot of dogs, but yeah, he's not good with dogs bigger than him. He likes most Spitz breeds, but not so much the ones that are bigger than him. So, Lappies, Keeshonds, or Keeshonds, if you're going based on how it looks like it's spelled. He likes Pomeranians, he likes Japanese Spitzes, not such a fan of Huskies. He's a bit nervous around Huskies. He doesn't seem to hate them, but he's nervous around them. Whereas he hates golden retrievers. Except for the golden retriever that lives down the street. So there are some exceptions to all these things. And, even with the dogs that he likes, I'm not sure how he'd react to a Lappy, but puppies in general. He doesn't like puppies. A lot of dogs get to an age where they dislike puppies. Yes, I've got a heat pack because this particular spot has been a bit tight today. He loves greyhounds. He's gay for greyhounds. And it's kind of strange. It's a big, tall dog, but very skinny, whereas he's a small, fluffy thing. And you'd think, wouldn't he go for more dogs like him? But no, he likes that tall, skinny dog. Interesting. He likes them to a gay level. That's how into them he is. What else? He doesn't like dogs that have that sort of box-shaped face, you know, bulldog type looks. Squashed faces he's not a fan of. The little dogs he's a little bit better with, but big ones he's like, no, don't take that near me. He doesn't like dogs that look like there's something wrong with them. So there's a dog in our area who seems to walk with a slightly tilted head. He doesn't like that. He hates that dog. Like, its eyes are a bit weird too, and I'm like, oh, okay. And you know, like, when I say he hates them, he will growl. He'll be like, oh, meh. And because it's so chaotic, I've never been able to get any film of it, but like, it's like he's another dog, and he's so out of his mind. Even when I pull him away, it takes him a while to sort of settle down, and like, you know, I'm trying to get him to look at me and trying to give him treats to distract him and just not let him, but he keeps trying to see where the other dog is. Yeah, he gets a bit out of his mind, and haven't quite found the strategy yet. Because, yeah, like, you know, you can pull him away, you can pull on the leash, he's like, no, he's just out of his mind, you know, past threshold, and yeah, trying to get him away from the situation is the best thing for that. At least that I've worked out at this point. And, you know, he's... he will try, like, you know, if I'm not prepared, he will try and lunge at the other dog, which, you know, freaks everyone out. He's never actually tried to, like, bite seriously, but because he looks so scary, it puts people off. And, you know, like, I've grabbed him, got him to face me, and he's just still growling in my face, but he's not going to do anything. It just looks scary. He's trying to act tough, and I think that's why it might be more of a fear thing, but it's hard to know. With the puppies, I think it's just that he wants to be the boss. He's always been a bulldozer kind of dog. Like, in puppy school, he had to be pulled out of puppy play because he's just too much for the other dogs. He would just go in, try and run everyone over. Lappies do have a very over-the-top style of playing, like a lot of Spitz breeds do. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of his classes were just full of these soft oodle dogs. So he he was just too much, and he's always been too much. And I have a feeling he was like the dominant dog in his litter because he was the biggest. And when I met them all, he was like really up the front there. So yeah, there's a bit of his personality. And I think also being desexed late, like while he still had his balls, it was a lot harder for him. He's settled down a lot, but he's still got specific ideas about certain dogs. What are some other dogs? I did send like a message to a friend with a bit of a list, but I cannot remember. Yeah, those are the main ones. And like, you know, past dogs, so Hope was scared of everything. My little one. He was scared of everything. Fair enough. He was tiny. He was a rescue. He had a bit of trauma. He had a hernia. He had, you know, so many medical issues. Everything was scary to him. Except home. And except dogs behind fences. Triton is actually scared of dogs behind fences. Which is interesting. Like, the little one, fence, I'm safe. Him, fence, oh no. Even if it's a breed he's fine with, he can get a bit weird about it. Allie, our first Labrador, she was a really good dog, a really sweet dog. The one kind of dog she didn't like was German Shepherds, and we had no idea why. So, like, you know, dogs will have opinions, but Triton's the most opinionated dog I have ever had, and yeah, he judges. He doesn't like dogs that'll just run at him on leash. There are a lot of owners who will just let their dog pull them, and he doesn't like that. I mean, I don't let him pull towards other dogs. I get him to sit or lie down, or I redirect him, or I kind of accidentally trained him come past, and he knows if I say come past, like we're just going to go past and try not to associate with that dog. Yeah, not really a conscious. I kind of like accidentally train words. For example, like I realized with Hope and like with past dogs, I trained them gentle just by like not giving them the treat if they were trying to snap at me, and they'd sort of get the idea. Like, it's not something that I put specific effort into. It's just one of those things that kind of happened. And so, you know, then I trained him. By then I had figured out that's what I was doing, so it was a bit easier to train him gentle. Although if he's too excited, he won't be gentle and he'll snap. You know, snap in a sort of like enthusiastic way, not in a bitey way, but you know. Anyway, so I trained him come past. But yeah, sometimes like it's really hard for him to go past a dog if it's one he really, really hates, and he has different levels of hate for different dogs. I feel like there was something else I was gonna say and it's like just left my mind. No, he's such a judgmental dog. Such a judgmental dog. And yeah, the thing about the head, like he doesn't like dogs in head harnesses. That's one I figured out like in the last few days. I've noticed, like, you know, because usually he'd like Labradors. We saw a Labrador today, but it was in a head harness, and he's like, he didn't really go for it, but I'm getting better at reading his body language, and I was just like, yeah, we're not going to talk to that dog. Usually I would let him talk to a Labrador. I don't let him talk to most dogs, you know, because I'm just not sure. It's hard to know if some dogs are puppies, for example, because some of them, they don't look like puppies, but then you ask the owner and it turns out yes, and that's why Triton's going, but yeah, no, he doesn't like dogs in head harnesses. I'm not sure why. Maybe because it's like unusual to him, or maybe because he senses there's a reason that dog has a head harness instead of a regular collar or regular body harness. Yeah, he doesn't like dogs being rude and bounding up to them. That's where I was going. Yeah, I don't know, like, don't let your dog just run up to other dogs. You don't know what they've been through. And yeah, he doesn't like rude behavior. I think the dislike of rude behavior is why he doesn't like puppies. But there is also that dominance thing of like, I want to be the big boss. I've got to show this little puppy who's boss kind of thing. And you know, people these days, some trainers are trying to say like dominance isn't a thing, but it kind of is. Like maybe there's a different word that suits it better, but if I say dominance, you know what I mean. He's like that. Like, you know, I think maybe that's why he doesn't like bigger dogs, because he wants to be the biggest and strongest. And if a bigger dog comes along, he's like, damn, that's not me. And yeah, he's so judgmental of like behaviors and, you know, whether a dog looks right, and I'm starting to get a better sense of, you know, which ones he's likely to get along with or not. Another thing is like, sometimes it's hard to ask owners, because if he's being a problem, I'm just trying to get him away, so I don't have a chance to ask them about their dogs. But, you know, I wonder if undesexed males might be an issue, because that's an issue for a lot of dogs. A lot of dogs don't like an undesexed male. Different terminology for different things. But in Australia, it used to be the case that all dogs pretty much were desexed as puppies. But, you know, as we've learned more about the development and the importance of hormones and, you know, all kinds of things, there are more and more dogs around that aren't desexed, and you can't always tell. Like, you couldn't tell with him unless you actually really looked, because he's so fluffy. You couldn't really see his balls unless you went looking for them. And so there's other dogs like that. Also, sometimes if you're going by too fast, you can't see, and if the dog is coming head on, you can't see, but they can smell it on each other. So I wonder if that's a thing. I also wonder, like, does he have that issue with females who aren't desexed? It's even harder to know with them. So there's like some of those scent messages that they sending that we just don't know. And then some of the more subtle body language things, you know, sometimes it goes so fast you could miss it, or, you know, it's something that we just don't pick up on as silly humans. What else doesn't he like? I don't know, I think it's mainly the rude behavior, certain breeds, certain sizes of dogs and puppies, and this is like, I'm starting to get more of this mental checklist of whether or not he's going to like a dog. He has some best friends though, and so, like, you know, he's more likely to be better with dogs that he knows. So like the golden retriever up the road, he likes that one because they've talked to each other behind the fence, and that dog is so sweet. So sweet. Yeah, I think there's another golden retriever in the area that he was okay with, but I can't always recognize which one is which, so I'm just careful when we can't go across them. But yeah, no, he judges, he excludes. Also, there's some interesting things, like there's another dog that doesn't like him and didn't like him, like, you know, when he was a puppy, we were walking past a cafe and this dog went off at him, and he has remembered that dog ever since and will avoid, like, he gets scared of this dog. He doesn't growl at this dog, he gets scared. He was corrected for his idiot puppy behavior, and he's never forgotten it. And that dog hasn't forgotten him, and is like, you know, it's rare for them to get close to each other. That owner I do talk to, and so we have gotten them pretty close with treats, and they've been okay, but they prefer not to be near each other. But the interesting thing about that is that dog, so we were passing a cafe, and this is when Triton was a silly puppy and he wanted to say hello to every other dog, and I was struggling to teach him you can't just go up to every dog. That big dog correcting him, being like, no, you can't just come up and get in my space, actually helped Triton to not bother dogs at cafes. So now it's not just that cafe, he generalized it to other cafes. If we're going past a cafe where dogs are just sitting down, he won't bother them. And, you know, the other day, like, you know, we've done a couple years of work on this now, but the other day we were going past, like, you know, the cafes, a lot of them these days have, you know, outdoor seating, and so there were dogs on either side of us, and we had to go through the middle, and he was so good. He got through it, and like there was this one little dog that was woofing at him, and we got past without incident. And so I reward him whenever we go past a dog without incident. And I also reassure him if he does start to grumble, you know, I get him past as fast as we can. Sometimes it's hard because some dogs upset him more than others, and so he needs a little bit more time to calm down. So I just pull him aside as best I can wherever is available, and just, you know, wait until his out of his mindness comes down a bit. But yeah, so long way to say, like, it's kind of like I know our society loves to think that dogs are perfect, and dogs are better than people, don't get me wrong. You know, but they're not this dogs don't judge, dogs don't exclude. Dogs do have opinions. They do have friends. They do have enemies. They have preferences. You know, and there are problem dogs. Like Triton just has strong opinions, doesn't like certain dogs. If he wasn't on leash, and if I wasn't, you know, showing some leadership to him, I don't know, maybe there could be more of an incident. I'm not willing to let that play out. You know, like anytime he's occasionally something will happen where like maybe I've misjudged it, or maybe he's decided very late that he dislikes a dog, because sometimes he's like been sniffing a dog, they've seemed fine, and then all of a sudden he'll decide he hates that dog. And sometimes he will, you know, actually manage to pin them, but he's never actually bitten the other dog. You know, like he's mouthing in the same way that he mouths my hand. You've seen some videos where we're playing and he'll just mouth my hand and my hand is fine. He sometimes does that sort of as a, like, you know, he tries to pin the dog and is like, don't do that, but he doesn't actually bite. So he's trying to send a message, and it looks terrible to us as humans, but you know, it seems like a dog politics thing in the end, and he's not actually trying to be aggro. Whereas there are other dogs that will bite down on another dog, cause an actual injury. With our second Labrador, Marley, he had a problem. I think at a dog park there was like an American Staffy or something, and it bit Marley. Marley's such a sweet dog, but he could be a little bit rude because he would try and hump all the other dogs. He's a rescue, and we think he was desexed very late. And yeah, but he, you know, he was very good natured. He's just a bit silly sometimes, and I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but this Staffy bit him on the head, and it was like this gaping kind of, you know, about that big. And Mum didn't take him to the vet because he was just acting fine, and I'm like, there's a hole in his head. Oh my god, that dog was so tolerant. He just put up with so much, and so like he had to have stitches for that. So like, and that from what it sounds like, you know, Mum was the only one there, so that the owner like yoinked their dog, whisked it out. I think, you know, yoinked Marley first to get him out of that dog's way, and then took his dog and like ran away. And, you know, there were stories, people said that, you know, it happened to their dogs as well. I don't know what happened with that. It's kind of hard to track down these people if they don't give any details. But that is a actually aggressive problem dog who is actually going to bite and do damage, and like is one of those bigger breeds that, you know, have very strong jaws and all that. Like that, there's a sort of a distinction between dogs that are just trying to make a point and dogs that are actually aggro. And like the fact that aggro dogs exist, here we go with this. I know, because dogs are cute and they're better than humans, but let's not lie to ourselves, because I think that's where some of the problems come from as well, is if people are thinking that dogs are perfect and then they let them get away with stuff and then wonder why a problem happens. Like, no, they're still animals. They're still, they do have opinions. They're not just like robots that do, what we expect them to do. They can be unpredictable. I think, like, what dogs do is they don't lie. And, Triton, okay, he doesn't like some dogs and he will say so. But at least he's not doing what humans do, which is pretending to like someone just to get something out of them. Or, people come up with these weird social games, which I've just never understood. And I don't know, have probably, some of the stories I've heard people tell about me, fucking hilarious when they come up. And I'm just like, you know what? You can believe whatever you want about me. I don't give a shit, because if you fall for those stories, you're probably not the kind of person I want to hang out with anyway. And, also, I don't tend to hang out with people in general. But anyway, that's besides the point. Humans play these weird games with each other and can be manipulative and lie. Whereas if a dog doesn't like another dog, it's not going to pretend to like that dog. It'll put out some signal. Some dogs run away. Some dogs cower. Some dogs, like Triton, will be like, no, I don't like you, get out of my face. And then other dogs attack. There's different levels of what they communicate, but they communicate it. Whereas humans, I don't have time for the weird politics of human bitchiness. And it's hard, like, sometimes people will warn me about someone because, like, I've happened to interact with them online, but I haven't actually met them, I haven't had any, and they'll tell me, oh, this person is, like, terrible and whatever. And unless they've, like, actually been convicted in a court of law of something, it's hard for me to judge them, because I know that people will say these things about other people because some of them are playing games, or sometimes there's a misunderstanding and they just, it all kind of snowballs and people don't necessarily see the other side. I know Triton's not seeing the other side of the other dogs, but he's not playing all these games surrounding his opinion. I don't know. So, like, when we talk about dogs being better than humans, I think we should be a bit more realistic than this. Look at this, it's pink, it's like rose tinted. It's actually a rose tinted view of dogs. That's not, like Dogs New South Wales. I like the work they do generally, because they are promoting responsible breeding and all that. And, those adopt, don't shop people, I hate them. But, the adopt, don't shop people have their own, distorted thinking. So, like, sometimes Dogs New South Wales, they'll post things that are, like, in a completely different form of distortion. Meanwhile, the adopt don't shop mob have their own distortions, and that's another funny thing about human society. Because we have the capacity to think, we have the capacity to think in very strange ways, and I don't know, come up with narratives that don't necessarily reflect reality. And okay, some things are hard to work out in reality, but it's like, I don't know, like, we have this tendency to cling to things regardless of how accurate they might be, like, once we have an opinion. I don't know, I suppose Triton has made up his mind about certain dogs, but I don't know. Be interesting to see, like, especially with that owner, with the dog that corrected him at the cafe, will they over time get used to each other? It's a bit, a bit early to say. We don't bump into each other enough. But they haven't had an issue like, that time that dog told him off. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if anything changes there. Sometimes, like, once a dog passes a certain age, or if something was particularly traumatic, like, all Hope's traumas, it can be really hard to snap them out of that, being way over threshold kind of thing. But, yeah, no. I will say, Triton's breed, it's not a beginner breed. Like, if you want a dog that's easier to mold and that's closer to what this is talking about, you would get a Labrador. The only problem with Labradors is they're quite big. And they can be strong. And, yeah, I know Mum would love another Labrador, but, everyone here is getting older. And we've already got, even Mikey, who's disabled. Sometimes he's less steady, everyone's getting old, everyone's getting health issues, and a big goofy Labrador. Yeah, no, a smaller dog is less likely to knock you over. And so I think Triton's about the biggest dog we can really get anymore. And I also picked him for health reasons, because I went through so much medical trauma with my rescue Maltese Chihuahua Hope. Anyway, I'm sort of getting off topic with that. I just think, let's not tell lies about dogs. Like, the message here, like, you know, let's welcome members into the community, support first-timers, and blah, 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 blah. That's cool. That's a cool message. But lying to yourselves that dogs are, like, perfect in some kind of a way. And, like, there are dogs, like, you could say, oh, dogs are so, they love humans, but not all dogs love all humans. Some dogs in particular dislike adult males. Adult male humans, I mean, not adult male dogs. You know, like, especially if they've had some kind of trauma, and certain dogs who've been through, like, domestic violence households, for example, they'll be really suspicious of usually the males and, like, male voices. Even Marley, like, we don't know what happened to him before he came here. He would flinch if we moved too fast when we first got him. But I noticed, like, when the boys used to yell at the TV when there's some sports game on, as if the TV can hear them, Marley would run into my room because I didn't have that voice. I wasn't yelling at anything, and we'd just chill out in here. You know, some of those dogs carry that trauma for ages, and they can learn to, like, you know, safer humans again, but some of them don't, and some of them just don't like people, and some of them attack people. Some of them have to be put down because they become that dangerous. So, yeah. I mean, I don't want to be too much of a downer, but dogs are better than people, but they still have, you know, their opinions, and they're not perfect, and life is not perfect. I don't think you'll find a perfect creature anywhere. I mean, it depends on your criteria, but, you know, even some people who want to love cockroaches because they're supposedly indestructible, well, we just had pest control in, didn't we? There was that cockroach that woke me up in the middle of the night and was, like, running on my desk over my papers and scrabbling, and then I managed to chase it across the room and tried to send that cockroach to the bathroom, but it went behind the bookshelf instead. And then I couldn't sleep, but then eventually it did die because pest control, the stuff finally started working, and it crawled back out, and then I got it on the end of this, and I flicked it into the toilet, and there you go, that's your indestructible cockroach is gone. But I do like that quote in Heroes, early on in, like, OG Heroes, where the guy says, like, you know, if God created the perfect being in its image, then God must be a cockroach. And I'm like, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like that. I'm like, okay. Anyway, that's a lot of rambling about doggos. He's behind me now. I'm not going to wake him. You've already seen him a bit. It would be nice if he turned up in this video to be like, hey, I'm that judgmental. You know, he is that nail polish emoji. It's like, yeah, I'm too good for these dogs. There are some dogs he just doesn't like. He does judge and he does exclude. And I have to stop him from going after them. I don't know why sometimes instead of just avoiding, he wants to go at them. He wants to, like, start something. I don't know what that is. Like, is it that the best defense is a good offense kind of mindset? I don't know. He does have that bulldozer personality, and he did have a lot of testosterone in him until, you know, August last year. It should have faded by now, but I don't know. I desexed him as soon as I was given the okay to, but yeah, I think it did shape him a bit. Although it's hard to say because he was always a bulldozer, so maybe he was always going to be like this, and I don't know. I gotta try not to judge myself too much because sometimes these things are just what they are. And I'm doing my best with what I know and what my skills are. People in the local area think I'm a dog trainer, and I'm like, no, I just have a lot of time to teach him tricks, and I don't want him to be a menace. So, yeah. Sometimes they're like, oh, when we get our dog, we'll bring him to you to learn stuff. And I'm like, yeah, no, just watch YouTube. If you want to teach your dog tricks, There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube. I do have a donut heat pack. It's almost run out of heat. Okay, I said I would shut up. I'm gonna shut up. Bye.